Hello everyone, I hope you are doing well. Today is our monthly Q&A, so apologize in advance to everyone whose name I will butcher today. I will answer a lot of interesting questions asked by our community members. And as mentioned earlier, if a question deserves a dedicated video, I will only provide a brief answer in the Q&A video and then elaborate on it in a future video. But first, let's warm up with Dao De Jing commentary and Xiu Dao. Today's sentence is 重为轻根 from the 26th chapter of the Dao De Jing. This chapter is the further explanation of the second chapter of Dao De Jing. In this chapter, Lao Tzu continued to explain his concept of naive dialecticism. In other words, the concept of different contradictions. The first two sentences indicate the core content of this chapter. Lao Tzu said, quote, 重为轻根，静为躁君, end quote. Translation: Heavy is the root of light. Stillness is the master of impatience. End translation. In other words, gravity is the root of lightness. Stillness is the ruler of movement. These two sentences are a pair of core concepts of Taoism. Taoists emphasize and promotes the still, the static, and the constant. Then Lao Tzu explained his conclusion further by giving some examples. He said, translated quote, therefore, the sage's daily walk does not depart from gravity. Although he may have magnificent sights, he calmly sits with a liberated mind. But how is it when the master of the 10,000 carriages in his personal conduct is too light for the emperor? End translated quote. Here, Lao Tzu emphasized the concept of wu wei or non-action by illustrating a social phenomenon. At the end of this chapter, Lao Tzu used two sentences to further explain the reason for the first two sentences of this chapter. Lao Tzu said, 轻则失根，躁则失君, end quote. Translation: lightness leads to loss of roots. Impatience leads to loss of control. End translation. So, Lao Tzu re-emphasized the importance of Zhong or gravity and Jing or stillness. In Xiu Dao practice, this chapter is very important in guiding energy refinement practice, especially the first sentence, 重为轻根. 重 means heavy, gravity. 为 means is. 轻 means light. 根 means root. Put together as already translated moments ago, 重为轻根 means heavy is the root of light. Now, the question becomes, in Xiu Dao, what is heavy and what is light? Well, we all know that there are two types of medicine in Xiu Dao practice. Medicine here has specific meanings. Check out my video titled Supreme Medicine in Xiu Dao, in which I have introduced the concept of Sanbao or the three treasures and the supreme medicine concepts. Link is in the description. So, there are two types of medicine, internal medicine and external medicine. Internal medicine is the one that is refined to convert to prenatal energy or 先天气, while external medicine is the one that is used to refine internal medicine. According to the Taoist concept, postnatal energy is part of external medicine or 外药. and it is light. Then internal medicine or 内药 is the one that will be refined into elixir, and it is heavy. So heavy and light here represent prenatal and postnatal energy. Also, 修道 practice is the process to refine the internal energy, the golden elixir, the prenatal energy, and they are heavy. That is why in the first sentence of this chapter, Lao Tzu said that heavy is the root of the light, or golden elixir is the root of external energy. In other words, the Taoist practice focuses on prenatal energy. So, this is the great chapter to help 修道 practitioners understand the differences between prenatal and postnatal energy, which are the key factors to succeed in the energy refinement process. Also, all the sentences of this chapter have specific meanings in guiding 修道 practice. I will talk more about this chapter in a future video. With that, let's get on with our monthly Q&A. Questions answers in today's video include: first, E.M. Barker, vibrations in strikes. Next, Ofer Jrl, Santi basics. Next, Maciej, 修道 practice and meal time. Next, from Anonymous, Tai Chi stance. Next, Rocket Tom, Tai Chi and dynamic tension. Next, Tracy, meditation and cleaning the mind. Next, Ofer Jrl, Tai Chi and Fa Jin. Finally, Ofer Jrl, Dao De Jing and mind. So, without any further ado, let's get started. E.M. Barker asks about vibration motion in a strike. He says, quote, "Is it a vibration strike, a short or long strike, and how is it used in internal martial arts?" End quote. Thank you for the question, Ian. Vibration involved in a strike can occur in both short and long strikes. In martial applications, especially when a movement is executed very fast, short movement with a high frequency of vibration is the result of speed and muscle tension. However, it should not be confused with some practices involving relaxation-oriented motion. For example, one of my Chen-style Tai Chi teachers, Ma Hong, would sometimes shake his fist during some punching movements in demonstrations. Some people have wrongly interpreted the shaking motion as a Fa Jin execution. Actually, the shaking motion was for relaxation purposes. He himself told me that in Tai Chi routine practice, after punching, the fist should relax, and that was why his demonstration had that kind of shaking. The main objective was to achieve relaxation. The shaking was only a means toward that end. In other words, it is an exercise to just let go. Now, to answer the second part of your question about how it is used in internal martial arts. As mentioned in the beginning, the vibration in motion is a result of a fast power release and not an intended motion. Its application is the same as other Fa Jin movements. Ian, I hope I have answered your questions. Let's move on to the next one. Ofer Jrl asked about Santi stance training of Xing in Tai Chi practice. He says, quote, "Would it be suitable to you to dedicate a video or part of it to the basics of the Santi stance for people like me who are not Xing peoples. From this video and others, it seemed to me, I hope I'm not wrong, that even Tai Chi practitioners could benefit much from practicing the Santi stance as part and addition to their general Tai Chi training. End quote. Thank you, Ofer Jrl. This is a very interesting question. With regard to Santi training itself, please check out my video titled Internal Style Concepts 39, 形意24 Method, in which I have introduced how to practice Santi stance based on the 24 method or 24 principles of Santi stance. The link is in the description. Now, let me answer the last part of your question about Santi practice benefiting Tai Chi practitioners. Since I practice all three internal styles of martial arts, I fully understand and have experienced the benefit of cross-training. So, what is cross-training in the context of internal styles? If you practice more than one style, is this considered cross-training? Well, it depends. For example, I practiced all the three internal styles equally, but my practice of Xingyi was not aimed to improve my Bagua practice. Likewise, my practice of Bagua was not aimed to improve my Tai Chi. So, this approach cannot be considered cross-training. Now, I'd like to describe the term cross-training in the context of the three internal styles. If someone picks some movements of Tai Chi and uses them in his Xingyi training for a specific purpose, that would be considered cross-training. Practicing movement of a style without the specific intent of improving your practice of another style is not cross-training. Again, I'm only talking about internal styles. Everything else is beyond the scope of this discussion. Now, the question becomes, is cross-training useful in practice? Short answer, it depends. If a style has certain issues by design, then cross-training may be a good idea. For example, if a style does not have a dynamic body structure, you can pick up some movements from another style to mitigate this issue. Another situation, which is actually the more common one, is that the issue is caused by the practitioner himself. For example, issues in practice may occur due to the practitioner's body shape or physical condition. In that case, the practitioner can pick up some movements from another style to train a specific aspect to compensate for the issues caused by his own physical condition. Another situation is if a practitioner likes a certain practice or approach of another style and chooses to practice that specific exercise or movement. It can or cannot be considered cross-training depending on the final outcome in the practice of the main style. So, cross-training is the deliberate practice of another style's contents, aiming to improve a main style. So, your question of training Santi for Tai Chi practitioners may or may not be a cross-training method depending on your Tai Chi objective. However, if a style is well developed, there's no need to borrow training materials from other styles. In other words, if your objective is to make progress in a particular style, I recommend you maintain your focus on that style itself. For example, if you practice Xingyi, you don't need to practice Chen style Tai Chi in order to practice the dantian rotation motion since the practice is already baked into the Xing system, and adding some fundamental practice such as Tai Chi dantian rotation will most likely affect your Xing practice. When we see a problem in practice, we first need to figure out the root cause of the problem. Ofer Jrl, I hope I have answered your question. Let's move on to the next one. Maciej asked, quote, do people on Xiu Dao tradition meditate after or before a meal? End quote. Thank you, Maciej, for this interesting question. Well, you can practice Xiu Dao whenever you want. The only relevant prerequisites are: first, you should not feel very hungry when practicing, and two, you should not practice it immediately after having a big meal. In the old days, there was a popular proverb, 饥则神乏, 饱则神易困. It means if you are hungry and practice, then it is very hard to focus. If you practice when the stomach is full, then it is easy to become sleepy. So, the best time to practice is normally between meals. In other words, when you are neither too hungry nor too full. Maciej, I hope I have answered your question. Let's move on to the next one. Anonymous asked by email, quote, in the context of one's ongoing Tai Chi practice, what is your general recommendation regarding the frequency and duration of standing post, 站桩 practice? What do you consider to be the key aspects of 站桩 in order for students to maximize the benefit of the practice? End quote. Good question. Thank you, Anonymous. First of all, 站桩 in Tai Chi practice only has a very short history. The Tai Chi classics written about 100 years ago or even later contain no clear written record of this kind of exercise. So, 站桩 practice in Tai Chi is a much newer invention compared to Xing and other styles. Also, Tai Chi stance is mainly for health maintenance purposes. So, relaxation is the main purpose of this practice. Since it is for relaxation purposes, it can be practiced many times a day and also can be practiced for as long as you want. However, when it comes to teaching, I have my students practice a couple minutes of 站桩 between two physical intensive exercises in order to help them rest and relax. This is how I treat 站桩 in Tai Chi practice. Furthermore, 站桩 can be used to cultivate vital energy if practiced properly. This may go beyond the simple Tai Chi practice in terms of the practice content of a typical Tai Chi style. However, it will be helpful to understand and improve upon some energy experiences through practicing Qigong. Also, it is worth noting that there's no traditional Tai Chi Qigong. Any Tai Chi Qigong you may see today is the new invention, sometimes named after some old terms and stories. While the combination of Tai Chi and Qigong is a great way to improve vital energy practice, it doesn't help toward martial application. Improvement of vital energy practice can also be achieved through Tai Chi 站桩 practice. So, long story short, integrating Tai Chi 站桩 with Qigong exercises will strengthen the benefits of 站桩 and is a good way to practice Tai Chi 站桩. Anonymous, I hope I have answered your questions. Let's move on to the next one. Okay, Rocky Tom asked about Tai Chi training. Quote, I have a question regarding Tai Chi practice. I've heard commentary about someone witnessing practitioners executing traditional routines using dynamic tension instead of the more relaxed method. Would this approach be beneficial in any way or harmful? End quote. This is a very good question. Thank you, Rocky Tom. In any martial art practice, there is always this kind of debate about whether one should use the dynamic tension training method or not. After reading your question, I used ChatGPT to understand the meaning of this term. ChatGPT says, quote, dynamic tension refers to a concept often associated with physical fitness and bodybuilding. The fundamental idea behind the dynamic tension is that you can build strength and muscle by pitting one muscle group against another without the need for external resistance such as weights or machines. Instead, you rely on the resistance generated by contracting your muscle and creating opposition forces. End quote. So, after reading this text, I understand the meaning now. Thank you for helping me learn a new term. Now, let me answer your Tai Chi question based on this definition. First, we have to know the purpose of a Tai Chi training. Overall, Tai Chi, like any other Chinese martial art style, emphasizes relaxation. The reason for relaxation is not to build muscular strength, but to help a practitioner master the movement, a routine, and a technique. However, to apply a technique based on a movement or a part of a routine, certain muscular strength is necessary. Even though we can see that with time of practice and the improvement of experience, muscular strength is only one of the factors in executing a martial technique, and sometimes it becomes less important than the techniques. Still, it is a very important aspect to any martial artist. Martial art is not magic, even though a highly skilled martial artist can possess a quote-unquote magical technique. However, that martial artist must have trained in muscular strength for decades before obtaining an advanced skill that is not so dependent on muscular strength. So, everyone needs to practice muscular strength and at the same time improve martial skills. Now, the question is, how to train muscular strength? Is the dynamic tension training method a good one? In the internal style of martial arts, we use single movements, weapons training, and even martial forms that invariably involve a certain level of dynamic tension training. For example, when you practice Fajin, the moment when you release the martial power, one muscle group must tense against another even if for a very short time. Everyone requires muscular strength, and it is very important to train your muscles even though you are doing Tai Chi. What I want to point out specifically is that it is not a good idea to practice a routine with the dynamic tension method, but could be worth training as an auxiliary exercise to build muscle. So I recommend you give it a try. As long as there is no compromise on good Tai Chi training habit, you can continue it. Also, I hope you will keep me posted on your progress with this method. If you feel dynamic tension gets in the way of your practice, do let me know as well. I would appreciate it if you share your experience of this method with me in the future. Thank you again for asking this question, Rocky Tom. I hope I have answered it. If you feel I misunderstood your question, please do not hesitate to let me know. Let's move on to the next one. Tracy asks, quote, how does one clear the mind and keep random thought from entering the mind while meditating? End quote. Thank you, Tracy, for this very commonly asked question. I guess many other community members may also be interested to know the answer. First of all, it is normal to have different thoughts come to our minds while meditating. It is one of the objectives of a Xiudao practice to be able to seize many thoughts when meditating. A very common solution which is expressed in a proverb format is to 以一念代万念. 一 means with, 一念 means one thought, 代 means replace, 万念 means tens of thousands of thoughts. Put together, this proverb means that in Xiudao practice, a solution to seize too many thoughts is to focus on one thing, such as one body area, very often the lower dantian area, in order to stop having too many thoughts. So that is one solution. Another very common solution, also expressed as the proverb is 事来心应，事去心直. 事 means event, thought, 来 means comes, 心 means mind, 应 means reflects, deal with, 去 means leaves, 直 means stops, comes. Put together, it means that when a thought occurs, you just reflect it, normally without any attachment. And then when a thought leaves or stops, then calm down the mind and keep working on energy work. So there are basically two basic approaches to dealing with your thoughts. Of course, there are many other methods as well. However, the main takeaway here is that no matter what kind of and how many thoughts come to your one practicing, as long as they don't bother you too much, you should not be too concerned about them occurring. In other words, the key point is not let the natural human function affect you. Xiudao involves the practice of our mind, and we should not let the basic function of our mind interrupt our practice. So accept it, work on it, and you will improve your practice with time. Tracy, I hope I have answered your question. Let's move on to the final set questions for today. Ofer Jrl asked two very interesting questions here, and I'd like to answer them one by one. First question, quote, while I watch you or other Chen Tai Chi master demonstrating Fa Jin while performing the Chen style movements, I see that all the body parts of or many of them are participating in the FA part of the Fa Jin process. The movements seem to be expressed not only internal but also externally. While I watch other Tai Chi masters, especially from the Yang branch of Tai Chi, I see that they Fa with much less external and expressive body movements, but still with obvious and apparent effect on the practice partners. With regard to this, does Chen Tai Chi Fa as in Fa Jin is different from the Yang style Tai Chi style Fa, having major different mechanism of Fa Jin, not just slight differences? If not, why we generally don't see Chen style master Fa in less impulsive and more subtle way? Can the Fa both ways? If yes, what are the differences between those two ways of Fa, and what are the differences in terms of a training method and code? This is a very good question. I will make a dedicated video to explain it in more detail in the future. So for now, I will only provide a brief answer. First of all, Chen style and Yang style each apply a different approach to training. A typical Yang style, especially the Yang Sheng Fu style, really emphasizes the relaxed manner in routine training. Li Yaxuan, a very famous Yang style master and a disciple of Yang Sheng Fu, even used the term 大松大软 to describe Yang style Tai Chi practice. 大 means great, Song means relaxed, 软 means soft. At the same time, Chen style emphasizes the silk reeling energy of Chan Si Jin, which involves strengthened energy while maintaining a relaxed manner. We have to know that in martial art training, if there is a strengthened movement, then there must be an energy-releasing movement as well. So, Chen style uses silk reeling to practice both obvious and subtle Tai Chi martial techniques. This is why there are many Fajin movements involved. However, we have to know that Yang style's form in public is different from what some highly skilled practitioners practice in private. In the old days and even today, great Tai Chi practitioners have to practice Fajin, no matter what style. Even more, great Tai Chi practitioners utilize weapons such as long poles or spears to practice martial power. It may be a quote-unquote secret to the general public, but it is not at all a secret to practitioners who have reached an advanced level. So, there are differences between these two styles of Tai Chi in terms of training method, and as a result, their external appearance is different. Again, I will make a dedicated video to talk about this topic in the future. Now, let's move on to your second question. Your second question, quote, in the commentary of chapter 14 of the Dao De Jing, you emphasized that static practice is the core practice in Xiu Dao. If I understand you correctly, you mean that for one to practice Dao's meditation, one must empty one's mind, the daily thinking, feeling, and perceiving mind. If so, practices such as opening the small and grand cycle, focusing on specific gates, or focusing on one of the dantians are not Xiu Dao practice, because in them you use the mind Yi. Can you clarify this issue? End quote. Very interesting question. That is a very commonly misunderstood topic in the community. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to clarify it. A static approach does not mean you will not utilize your mind in practice at all. The static approach is a general method in which we do not forcefully deal with energetic experiences. More importantly, a practitioner has to let the energy act first, then the mind will react to it. Of course, there are many occasions the mind has to actively work on certain aspect, but that is still reactive by nature. That is the real meaning of static. Also, focusing on specific gates or focusing on certain area is static as well, since the focus should be very subtle. Strong focus will be considered dynamic. So, the level of focus determines the difference between static and dynamic. Furthermore, as for the term Yi or mind, yes, Yi starts from the postnatal mind, but eventually one has to work on the prenatal mind, which can only be worked on using the static approach. Please make sure to check out my shoot-off playlist for further explanation of many key topics. I hope I have answered your question. Thank you again, Ofer Jrl, for asking many great questions. I appreciate your input very much. Those were all the questions for today. Thank you all once again for sending them and hope you found my answers informative. I thoroughly enjoyed the Q&A process, so please do not hesitate to ask more questions. That brings us to the end of today's video. Thanks for watching, see you next time, and enjoy your practice.